Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in today. My name is Iyad Alhamid, and today we have the pleasure of interviewing two remarkable leaders in the tech industry. On one side, we have Mr. Julian Hamoud, the visionary president of Trusted Tech Team, a rapidly growing cloud solutions provider that has been disrupting the tech industry by slashing businesses' IT budgets in a time where inflation is at a 40-year high. And on the other side, we have a very special guest, Mr. Kevin Turner, the former Chief Operating Officer of Microsoft. Kevin was the Chief Operating Officer of Microsoft from 2005 to 2016. Before that, he was the Chief Executive Officer of Sam's Club, and before that, he was the Chief Information Officer of Walmart. Kevin, can you share some of the stories that you've gone through at Microsoft? Your experiences, anything that would be beneficial for a startup like us?
Well, I mean, I think the ability to really transition Microsoft into the cloud, which was the last significant thing I worked on there, to completely change the business model from a licensing business model into more of a services-based business model was an extremely exciting, challenging, hard, rewarding transition that the company went through, and to go from Office to Office 365 and to go from Windows Server to Azure and all the services that connect around those things, was a very significant milestone, and certainly anything I've worked on, but that the team there embraced and was able to do in a very significant way.
That must have been a roller coaster. I know, like at Trusted Tech Team, we are in a roller coaster ourselves. Julian, you've been steering our ship basically for the longest time. How does that feel? How did you decide to start Trusted Tech Team, and why did you decide to focus on licensing?
Yeah, there was a major deficit in licensing knowledge, and especially as Kevin from the top down was noticing the transition into cloud. On the bottom, everyone was resistant of that change, and they were resistant for quite some time. So 2011 was origination of 365, and as it progressed, even 2015, 2016, 2017, you were so early to the game if you were on 365 and integrating into the cloud. So there was a heavy push, but between 2016 and 2018, that was when you're getting off the pot, or you're moving. You had to go 365. So I started with on-prem solutions, same thing, Windows Server, SQL Server, learning the licensing. Was 2014 to 2017, that was huge, and then again the final push was 2017, 2018, and that's when I started learning that, hey, if you don't move to 365 and you don't start learning the product, the security around it, Microsoft's not going to be supporting on-prem solutions anymore, so that's why I started studying the cloud solutions outside of the on-prem solutions, which I was well versed in at the time.
Now that we've had all of this in place, where do you see TTT in the next 5 years?
International expansion is the next big one. We are now opening overseas in UK. We have further Europe expansion planned. So we'll be moving into Germany and France next. They're big markets. Kevin's been a big knowledge base in our last discussion in target markets. So yeah, I think just further expansion, replicating what we've been so successful in North America.
That's very exciting. I think we're moving really fast. And Kevin, you have experienced such fast growth yourself, right? When you joined Microsoft in 2005, you had about 70,000 employees, and by the time it was 2016, it was at 114,000.
Mm-hmm.
So how did that feel? Like, how did you navigate that growth, and what processes did you put in place to make sure that the culture remains intact?
When I first got to Microsoft, it was a wide open, full-blown matrix, where very few people had direct line accountability for much within the company. So one of the first things I went about doing was sort of consolidating and streamlining the accountability and ownership of both product and customers, and the ability to do that in a harmonious way with people required a lot of development in and around business scorecards and getting people on shared goals. Again, it wasn't that popular at the time. Accountability is one of those things that everybody tells you they want, up until the point you actually give it to them. And so it's a fascinating sort of test case in human dynamics when you have an organization that thinks it's highly accountable, that really transitions to high accountability. It's easy to say, but hard to do. But the ability to truly go through and get people on aligned, shared goals, shared values, and bring them together with a common business scorecard was something that was very strategic at the time, and took us a couple of years to implement it and get it embraced by everyone. But they still use it to this day, so it's still working, and was one of the things that I left there that I'm very proud of.
The scorecard system is where you manage the performance of your sales managers. Is that correct?
Well, pretty much everybody was in the company was guided by a scorecard, and they all rolled up and laddered up to one another. So if you worked in the product group, you were an engineer, or if you were in the sales organization, or if you were in some of the support functions, they all had business scorecards that laddered up to the overall company goals.
Tim, a quick question that I had in regards to the scorecards from country to country. Were they modified going into different countries and cultures?
Only between mature countries and emerging markets.
Okay.
But every mature country had the exact same scorecard metrics to be measured against.
And year over year, I think we had prior conversations, those metrics, about 3/4 of those metrics would stay static.
Yeah.
25% of them will be variable based on what you were trying to.
Generally, it's a good, you could take 75, 25, or 80, 20 on an annual basis. They would remain constant. And then the churn would be in that 20 to 25% every year. You would have new metrics for new products, for new services, new things you want to bootstrap and grow as a company, or new things that become very important as a company.
And you had a team that would generate those metrics over time for each one of the initiatives you were pushing forward?
Correct. We had a full-blown business team that was led out of finance that drove the accountability around the scorecards, and actually partnered with HR to make it part of people's evaluations. It was all the way down through the organization.
Executive team.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Were there any challenges scaling that when you're going internationally?
I mean, not that were unique to international, no. There were challenges scaling it because, again, it was a very simple scorecard in the fact that it was 25 to 28 metrics. And the reason I chose 25 to 28 metrics was that's all you could fit on a sheet of paper legibly. So it was really important to keep it simple in that way. And then it was red, yellow, or green. So every business review, we would spend time on the reds, some time on the yellows, and not that much time on the greens. And so it was very, optically, you could really see where you're at a glance very quickly. And so when I would travel to Italy or to Spain or to, France or wherever, China, wherever, it was very easily to take their scorecard and they knew what I was going to come in asking and where I was going to go from a deep dive perspective with the company. But culturally, no, I mean, culturally, the Microsoft culture took a couple of years to embrace it. But once it was embraced, there was no country specifics or country cultural issues with embracing it. It was just about getting people behind it and getting them on board.
You joined Microsoft when it was basically on the brink of a major shift towards cloud solutions and mobile technologies. How did you navigate through that? And was there any specific challenge that occurred, like a trend or something that you didn't foresee? Anything that we can learn from during that time? Well,
I mean, during my early years, there was a product that was super hot called SharePoint. That I'm sure SharePoint's still out there today, thriving in its own way. But that was the fastest growing product at that time in the history of Microsoft to $1 billion. So we were really, and that was a collaboration suite of technology. And so there was a lot of partner opportunities during the SharePoint initiatives. And so we sort of morphed through the SharePoint initiatives. We were also re-engineering Windows at the time. When I showed up, they were just about to launch and roll out Vista, which was a disaster. And that was sort of my welcome party to Microsoft, was the Vista operating system, which did not go as planned. And then came behind it, there were great releases behind it with Windows 10 and others. But so yeah, we had a few early stumbles and a few early successes, on the on-prem side and in the traditional space. But then we began to see the marketplace change, with Gmail and some of the, Google was starting to make some waves around enterprise accounts moving over to Gmail, sort of trying to displace Office and Windows Server and SQL Server and other products that we had. But we were able to sort of rally, get behind Office 365, stem the tide, did a bunch of Google takeouts, candidly, that were done in the early days of the cloud formation. And then we began to get Azure going, where people could really do software as a service and do it in a very elegant way with existing applications and a platform as a service, building new applications on top of the cloud, which became more powerful even than the transition of on-prem to cloud. So there was a lot in that, and then all the while, the business model and the economics were changing so quickly for both Microsoft and for our customers. I mean, that's one of the things people probably underappreciated, is how much of a change it made to Microsoft's business model, in addition to a customer's business model, which is going from CapEx to OpEx. It was actually doing the inverse largely for us. And so that was tough, but it was a fascinating time to sort of get that business model over the hump, get analysts and the street up to date on why we were making this big change in investment, and the fact that we were having traction with both Office 365 and Azure. Those were sort of the two big beachheads that really went for us around cloud.
We'll go a little bit back to Vista. I'm actually glad you mentioned it. One challenge that businesses face, obviously, is making a big mistake, or like being left behind on some kind of technology. You hear names like Kodak and Nokia. They were on top of their game for the longest time, right? How did Microsoft manage to remain so resilient that they're now still on top of their game? They're still leading technology.
Microsoft's DNA had this philosophy of letting flowers bloom. And at the time when I got there, it was letting 1,000 flowers bloom. I don't think they let 1,000 flowers bloom today. I think they let a few hundred bloom. But when I got there, they were very big on experimentation and innovation and trying new things to do that. And so while the cloud looks like, it really came to life under Satya Nadella's era, it actually was born under a guy named Ray Ozzie and Steve Ballmer's era, because they had invested in that cloud technology. It became mainstream under Satya's regime, but one of the things probably Steve doesn't get enough credit for is he spent all the early money on cloud, and it became what it is today because of that early investment.
Those seeds are planted from way back when, and the resistance was absolutely insane on the customer side, and it sounds like on the Microsoft side as well.
Yeah. I mean, we had many developers dug in, not wanting to do it. That's why Ray Ozzie, who was the CTO that really replaced Bill at the time, when Bill stepped back into philanthropy full time, that we carved out a team, a special team that would only focus on that. Because we still also had a very large on-prem business to build and to cultivate and nurture. But it was fascinating that when we began to then integrate it back in, the body wanted to reject the organ, so to speak. And so that took a minute, but the company got behind it. And Satya was really a big champion behind that, on everybody getting on board with the cloud, and that, the rest around that, so to speak, speaks for itself in the results.
On the highest level, where did you see the transfer from that resistance, the on-prem versus cloud? I would say personally on the ground level, I saw it flipping around 2017 personally. When do you think that finally just turned the corner and cloud was starting?
I think around 2015 is when we began to do Google takeouts in a serious way, and Office 365 became an incredible product. And that Office 365, I can't emphasize enough the early success we had there with Office 365 and seats and wins, and the traction that we were able to save people money at the time. That softened the landing for Azure. When Azure first came out, it was a platform as a service only, not as much of a SaaS business, software as a service. And we sort of reversed those things and learned the hard way that we needed the SaaS as a service to help onboard applications and then convince people to rewrite them into the platform as a service. And so there was a little bit of re-engineering that went into that, which in the early days slowed Azure a bit, but it came. And the other clouds were wired the other way. So if you look at the other clouds, they were all wired as, including Amazon and Google, as a software as a service. Whereas now the money to be made is in platform as a service. And the money to be saved, if you're a customer, is in platform as a service. And so Microsoft's DNA is that was the start. So it's actually, even though it was a longer way to get there, it's a competitive advantage today because of the way we start.
Yeah. And the step up was so unique with Microsoft because it was Office attribution first, then email attribution, then Windows, then security, and potentially Azure. It was completely different than anything that was out there.
And Active Directory played a big part.
That was the lock. That was the hook. That was Anchor.
That was another important product that doesn't get enough press, except for people that know, how powerful Active Directory is still today and how powerful it was back then. There is no real competitor to Active Directory. I've always said that to our team. And it helped us. It helped us that IBM was doing a crappy job. Oracle was doing a crappy job. HP had lost their way. So we got some help from the marketplace. Google and Amazon were fierce, tough competitors, and they were coming after our market share, and that actually made us better. So the competition, is welcomed in the sense that it made us better. It made us innovate faster. Quit comparing ourselves to the traditional IT guys. Compare yourself to the new next generation IT guys. It's part of the learning that goes into it, but it was all very dynamic at the time.
And after you left, how did you feel about how Microsoft is doing on the cloud front? Is there anything you would want to come back and change yourself?
Not a thing. They've done amazing. They're growing share, which was always about what it was. I mean, they're growing share and they're out innovating Google and Amazon in a very rapid rate. I mean, the one thing that if you look at where this generative AI is going to go, it's going to be bigger than the cloud, which I never thought when I was in the middle of the throes of building the cloud. I thought this is as big as it gets. Guess what? It's not. Generative AI is going to be bigger than the cloud in my view. And so I think that's why it's so important for companies like yourself to get behind it and get on top of it, get in front of it, embracing the CoPilot programs, going after it. There's so many opportunities for you guys to create unique value. You have to differentiate to do it. But I do think there's a huge opportunity here for you to do something special in the AI space.
What do you think Microsoft would need to do to beat Google on the AI war?
Continue to keep their foot on the gas. They have a big lead. In the AI world, they have a very big lead against Google. They also have a giant lead against them in the cloud. And Amazon, ironically, is almost non-existent in the AI space. So they're actually missing this curve. And then you have Microsoft that's way out in front, and it's just keeping the foot on the gas on innovation, making sure they light up a great partner network, which I know they want to do, to help them reach all customers, all sizes, all shapes. And that's exciting. Like it's going to be a very fun thing to watch and be a part of, for sure.
Speaking of CoPilot, do you think it's going to evolve from the way it's being advertised right now? Sometimes a company would come up with a technology, it wants to do what it wants to do, but then it changes what it wants to do with that product. Do you think that's going to happen with CoPilot?
AI is going to evolve. And so the licensing and the royalties and the spiffs, they'll evolve too. I mean, it's so new. It's going to continue to evolve, and I think you embracing the change and the evolution and giving feedback back through your reps, I think it'd be super helpful. But it will definitely evolve, and within it, I would tell you that the differentiation that Microsoft has with your AI versus the public cloud OpenAI is a very powerful, enterprise-friendly, commercial-friendly AI application, because everybody's always wondering, what happens to my data? Where does it go? Where does it live? But you can actually control that with the Microsoft solution and have your own AI with their technology. Now, within that, there's a huge partner opportunity to help people consolidate their data, because AI is one of those self-learning technologies that the more inputs you give it, the smarter it gets with the inputs you give it. So everybody's going to want to organize their data, get it in alignment, and the ability to help a company do that, and specifically one that you know, I feel best about. You have small, you have medium, and then you have the unmanaged commercial accounts. In that unmanaged commercial accounts, they're going to have data all over the place, and they're going to need somebody to organize it. So I think downstream, your ability to sort of help take a company from sort of what in the world do I do about this open AI thing to let me take your hand and show you the value of it. I think it's transformational, and it will be a huge partner opportunity.
Yeah. We'd love to hear from you though. Like, where do you think AI is going to take us? Are we going to have a Skynet situation on our heads, or what do you think the future is for us?
I have no idea. I think it's a very fascinating time where this technology is so dynamic, and there's a lot of opinions on it, some scary opinions on it that are, you know, not necessarily wrong-minded. If it's used inappropriately, and for example, it can copy a voice, it can copy mannerisms, it can, you know, make it look like you just shot this video and somebody else was sitting in this chair using my voice. You know, ethically, there's some real concerns about how do we control that, and how do you know what's authentic, and how do you know what's not? And I think that's where you get back to, let's talk about your data, your AI, and us, you know, keeping it controlled and secure within our systems and within the boundaries of what we establish. So I think the open AI world still got some governance to come that will be evolved, and unfortunately, it will probably take a few horrific events or near tragedies that will then in turn drive the sort of legislation and governance that you probably wished you had right now.
Yeah, just like any technology. Julian, what do you think the impact of AI is going to be?
Yeah, I think at first it's getting the extreme benefit. The amount of time that's saved, the amount of money people will invest in AI, or companies that can expand AI. On the backside of it, the negatives, the cons, I think those will come in time, but that also opens up a new place for CSPs, for managed service providers to actually protect data, protect the customer, protect the employees. We're already seeing a massive rise in phishing attempts. Those phishing attempts are going to get so complex in nature. And again, yeah, we're looking at the positive, and then again in the negative, the feedback can come into the negative. But yeah, I believe international boundaries is a big one. I think the cyber attack can get more complicated in nature. So I think, yeah, there's definitely pros and cons. I think we're looking more towards the pros and, you know, what we're able to do with our customer base. And again, people are willing to pay for that because they're saving months. Even if we talk about data consolidation and bringing those data sources, which are scattered all through on-prem and throughout Azure, you can bring that data in and consolidate those reports and provide them to the companies and organization C-suite. It's invaluable. They'll pay for that. Those are services that people have never had in days, in minutes, instead of months.
Shifting gears a little bit to the partnership program that Microsoft had introduced. When they first introduced it, they sort of woven it into their operations, right? Why did they do that? And what do you think is the value that CSPs bring to the table?
Like I said, it's a new, complete technology revolution. It will have a lot of change with it. The business model is going to continue to evolve. The technology is going to continue to evolve. Customers' adaptation will continue to evolve. All those things drive a very fluid and dynamic offering. And that'll be something you'll have to prepare for and brace yourselves for, because it isn't going to slow down anytime soon. But I do think the offers they've got on the table right now, and then what comes behind it, as it relates to the ability to help someone have an AI module and help them with machine learning and then help them with their own AI implementation. Then you throw in the data, integration aspect of consolidating your data in data warehousing or a data lake or however it may come about, will make it super powerful. And then you have another arm that will branch out from that around line of business application reinvention. So, things like call centers and customer-facing engagements and those type of things, those will all be revolutionized by AI because your ability to troubleshoot or your ability to respond or your ability to give a customer specifically and precisely what they need based on the data is at a much, much more pure and genuine level than we've ever been able to do before. So that'll be very exciting. And then, you throw in the value-added services around it with security and cyber and where all that's going to go. I think that'll be another extreme partner chance for monetization. So the future there is very bright, but it's not known to everybody yet how it's all going to play out because the technology is still, still being developed in a very profound way. We're in the early innings of this technology revolution. So there's a lot of innings to come, and we're still in the early days.
Speaking of adding value, what do you think separates Trusted Tech Team as a CSP from the rest of the herd?
I think the fact that you guys have an incredible customer reputation, I think is very, very important because no amount of money or no amount of goodwill can really help you repair from a bad customer reputation. You just have to earn that every single day, and you earn it by what you do for the last customer that you just touched. And so I think the relentless focus you guys have on taking care of customers and creating value for them enables you to differentiate in the marketplace, or at least get the conversation started to be able to bring more solutions to more customers.
In terms of the CSP program, though, since Microsoft introduced the partnership program and accumulated more than 400,000 partners, it's become clear the value of the program, but do you think there are any drawbacks?
No, they operate in 191 countries. They got over, probably close to 2 billion customers now that use their products every day. You need a lot of people to support and service those. And not everybody's going to make good business decisions and run a great business. So I think that's always tough. No, I don't know of any drawbacks. When you jump on the cloud and you jump on the AI, generative AI specifically, you're jumping on two very steep trends, that cloud would be sort of in the middle innings, not even in the late innings. And then, generative AI is in the early innings. So you're really at the front end of two very big revolutions in technology that are going to take a lot of people to try things, and they aren't always going to work, but you got to have a lot of partners to be able to pull it off.
I think Trusted Tech Team, and we look at just the licensing aspect of 2017, 2018, creating a stepping guide for customers to go up 365 and learn about it. Same thing with Azure. We created a guide of here's where you start and here's where you finish. And not every customer was 500 employees, 5,000, 15,000 and up. You knew exactly where they're going to fall in that trajectory. And I think with AI, if we can build that stepping stone of here's where you are as an organization, here's where you're lacking in resources and lacking in AI, that's where we'll go up from there. And I think it's a huge propellant in what we're...
Yeah, you have a playbook and you should adapt that playbook.
Yeah, absolutely.
With the modern technology.
Now, one thing that many consider the backbone of any business, obviously, is customer service, right? How did Microsoft manage to understand exactly what customers need? Because that's very tricky.
I don't know that they ever would say they ever mastered it. Certainly under my tenure, we never mastered it, but we were on a daily basis, we were seeking to get better about it. The thing you have to realize about customers is the customer isn't always right, but something's always wrong. So when you think about it in that term, then when you're getting feedback, it's like, let me get to what's really causing your pain or your issue, or how do we improve things? So that's how we embraced it at the top, and spent, I've spent a lifetime trying, both major companies I've worked at, I've spent a lifetime trying to to do a better job for the customer. And it's a never-ending journey, and there's no destination, and there's no finish line, and you have to get up relentlessly every single day, trying to not only think like a customer, but act like a customer. In how you bring things to market and how you take care of people.
That makes me think, because a lot of the times when you've figured out what customers need and you've developed the product and you've marketed the product, the needs change. Mm-hmm. So is there something systematic that Microsoft followed to make sure that they're always ahead of the game, always shifting with the customer's shifting needs?
No, I mean, we did a lot of focus groups, a lot of learning sessions, a lot of listening sessions. But you know, customers, it's a funny thing about technology. A lot of times they don't even know the right questions to ask. So part of your ability to plant 1,000 flowers and let them bloom and experiment on things is to see what works, because technology has the capability of expanding someone's mind of what's actually possible. Because if they don't know that that's possible, then they don't even know to ask for it. So it isn't always what they ask for. It's really about, you know, helping them get to where they want to go, how to be competitive and get an advantage in the marketplace. That's the common thread. And there's other things underneath that. They always want to save money. They always want to make more money. And so the ability to, you know, synthesize the technology with those things make it very powerful when you can connect the dots.
Yeah, one big challenge in any form of customer service is deciding what to charge for and what to give away for free. Obviously, at Trust Texting, we try to add as much as possible. So we, you know, complimentary service here and there, but we do offer paid professional services. Do you see any, like any drawback to that strategy? Is there anything you would recommend?
I think in this space, the spaces we're talking about, I think you have to have a great professional services arm. People want a reasonable charge for professional services, and the big guys are not reasonable to big enterprises. So they're not going to be, certainly not going to be reasonable to, let's call it corporate accounts and small and medium-sized businesses where your sweet spot is. So I think the ability to give customers that alternative and bring that to them is a very significant advantage to give you guys more of a vertically integrated partner solution that you can bring to people.
There has to be a complementary offering as well to bring them in, we feel, on the support side. And then from there, once they trust the process, they trust the company, and they trust the direction, that's when the professional services, moves forward. And
you know, professional services people, whether they like it or not, they're sort of brand ambassadors, whether they realize it or not. Because they can do a great job and get invited to the company picnic, or they can do a crappy job and hurt the entire company's brand and profile in the marketplace. Yeah. There's very little, oh, that was okay. It's either that or this.
And it's even outside of performance. It's the way they dress, the way they show up, the way they attend the meeting, the performance that they have in front of the customer. Yeah, it's so wide an array. And again, the quality of talent. A big proponent of Trust Texting is everyone shows up to the office. It's been a huge staple of, what I've driven towards. 3 weeks since COVID, we all return to the office. We have to show our face on video. Those are just staples. We have to look good. We have to be presentable. Those are all things that are, again, building the experience for the customer. Whether we're working with a 250 employee company, 50 employee company, or 20,000 or 25,000 would not be. Those are the standards set. And again, those are the differentiating factors there, I believe.
Yeah, for sure. And how many of your professional services employees got invited to the company pick?
Yeah, and they drink way too much with the company events.
It's team building.
Team building,
Yeah,
absolutely.
You've managed teams for a long time. What do you think makes a truly successful leader?
People want to work for leaders that have dreams and ambition. It's really not motivating to work for someone who's not very ambitious or doesn't have big dreams. And I always ask that. And when I hire a leader, I always ask the question, would I want to work for the person? That's a simple sort of gauge. Would I be, okay working for this person? Would I learn something? Would I enjoy it? What would I get out of it? Those are all questions I ask before I sort of check the box yes for hiring of a leader. And, they have to have big dreams, big ambition. lead with integrity, be a servant leader, be someone that's collaborative and inclusive, but yet willing to make decisions. You know, an indecisive leader will kill momentum. And there's lots of them out there. They just get paralyzed with, oh, I don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to, you know, fail fast, learn fast, and recover. You know, when you screw up, own it, recover. But leaders, you know, have that deep sense of ownership, and they inspire people to be better than they would be without them. And so I think finding those leaders who can rally teams, rally people around a cause, around a purpose, describing and articulating the vision so clearly that the people on their team can see themselves in that vision is a real gift and a real skill. And the great leaders have that ability. So there's a lot of attributes that go into what is a great leader. But you know, those are a few that sort of jump out at me as really, really important.
You know, one of your recent LinkedIn posts that truly got my attention was, it was about the modern leader, right? They had to have agility, they had to have inclusivity, they have to have foresight. Is there anything else you would want to add to that, Julian?
Yeah, and again, as Kevin mentioned, it's you know, showing up first, leading last, and it's instilling positive leaders in the organization. It's lack of micromanagement. It's positive enforcement. It's clear vision. Failing fast, I think that's a big one. If you fail, it's absolutely okay, but move quickly, move rapidly, and ability to learn, ability to understand, and ability to attract talent as well. I think that's been a big propeller in our growth, is people want to work for someone that they see a vision for and they actually admire. And again, I think it's a massive proponent of, you know, trust, like teams growth.
Well, one challenge that almost every leader goes through is to decide when to do it yourself and when to delegate. How do you navigate that?
Well, I mean, it's not hard to know when you need to get to delegate. Yeah. If you're intellectually honest with yourself, you know whether this is something I should be doing or they should be doing. And it's really having the self-awareness, which is another great attribute for a great leader, is to have the self-awareness to be able to be intellectually honest with, is this the right thing for me to do it, or would I be better served to either teach them how to do it or ask them to do it and see if they can figure it out. And so that always is an easy barometer when you find yours. And sometimes we all gotta, you know, take out the trash and fill the copier with paper. That's just part of it, right? Like, you can't be above doing those things, but you got to ask yourself, how the hell did I get here, and why am I the one filling the copier and, you know, having to empty the trash can?
You want to also have the right talent. So building a team that can deliver success is a crucial part of being able to lead effectively. Did you have a specific strategy that you followed to make sure that hey, I'm building the best team I can build?
Oh yeah, yeah. We have very disciplined HR practices, talent reviews, really identifying high potential people. You know, those people that were promotable 2 or 3 levels in advance, those people that are promotable 1 level, those people that are sort of pros in place, those people who turn to yellow, who are just kind of, you know, filling a spot that we need to top grade. Yeah. You know, it just being, again, intellectually honest. And, you know, when you take over a new team, it's pretty easy to assess, you know, who are the players you want on the bus and who are the players you want off the bus. Hardest thing to do is, we've been running a team for 2 or 3 years, is to step back and say, hey, if I was starting a new team, how many of my existing players would be on my new team? So the easiest thing in the world to do is change what somebody else did. The hardest thing in the world to do is change what you did. Yeah. And so the ability to sort of reflect on that and intellectually every couple of years show up at work and say, I'm going to pretend and act and behave like this is my first day in the job. What would I do and what would I see? It's a hard thing to do, but it's actually a fun exercise. And I used to ask my directs. I had 17 direct reports when I was at Microsoft, but I used to ask them, you know, how many people on your existing team would be on your new team if you had, you know, the choice or the chance? And we'd go through that exercise once a year. It's a very healthy exercise to go through. And it also helps you target where you need to top grade your people. And top grading, doesn't have to be a negative process. Treat people with dignity and respect. But when you don't top grade, you're really hurting the rest of the team. That's the hard thing for young leaders to really appreciate and adapt, is when they're not doing a proper job top grading, they're actually holding other people back in the process.
I think that goes with, again, attracting talent is so important. We focus at Trust Tech Team on attracting talent, but also looking in the organization for those that are not performing, those that are cancerous to the organization, removing those components outside of the business. Because behind closed doors, especially when you grow from, again, you're going from 60,000, you're doubling your employee count, or whether you're going from 50 employees to 250 employees. It's the same thing there. Behind closed doors, you don't really know what those employees are doing. Mm-hmm. But again, I think that's a great piece of feedback to step back and analyze.
Let's shifting gears a little bit to the cybersecurity, because this is a topic that's a lot of people are talking about this, right? With the development of AI, attacks are getting even more sophisticated than before. So we need the right technology. And if you don't mind us asking, we noticed that you've invested in Illyria recently. Mm-hmm. Can you tell us why you chose Illyria?
Well, the guy who was one of the best security guys at Microsoft that I ever met founded that company. And then he went to Salesforce as the chief security officer. And then he left, he was there a number of years, and then he left there, and then he started this startup. So this is a subject matter expert who's been in the security game for a very long time. When he actually called me, and when he did, and said, hey, I'm starting this new co, I just, without him even telling me what the hell he was doing, I said, I'm in. So I'm betting on the person. Yeah. And I'm betting on a subject matter expert that I've got a lot of time in the trenches with. Particularly in the early days of Microsoft, he was, security was really all over the place, and this was the guy that really helped, reel it in and made a big difference. So that's why I'm betting on that. Yeah. And I invested in quite a few startups, but this one I'm kind of excited about.
Do you think Microsoft is doing what it needs to do to make sure they combat the rising attacks that are happening globally?
I certainly hope so. I don't have any inside information to tell you that they are. I think they all know why it's so important and why things are as volatile as they are. They are the commercial enterprise company for software, so they see it. They deal with security issues all day, and so I'm betting that they are and that they're on top of it. But again, security has no finish line. It has no destination. The hackers are getting smarter, the bad guys are getting smarter and more sophisticated every single day. And by the way, it's not just hacker groups that you're going after, it's countries. Yeah. And with billions of dollars of spend behind them, which is a scary thing to really think about and process, but that's the reality of where it is. So it's a tough deal, and it's one that they'll have to stay close to, and I'm sure that they are.
Microsoft recently dabbled with AR, which is another topic that's trending right now. Do you think it's going to be a thing? Do you see us using it?
I think it'll have some applications in its own way in different places. I do. Sports and entertainment was an obvious one. It'd be nice to be doing this interview as a hologram right now and be in my home in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, but it's not quite there yet. Yeah, so, I think it'll have its time. Yeah. But how big of an opportunity is it? I don't know. It's not as big as generative AI. I do know that.
That's how I felt too, because it's like when we saw ChatGPT, you're like, this is really giving us value like right now. With AR, it was a lot less than that. It was like, well, do I see myself using it? What is the actual need for this right now?
You have certain sectors that are utilizing it. I went to the Microsoft office in Dallas, and the medical applications is massive. The construction application is big. There's certain sectors that are going to use it, but in regards to commercial mainstream, I personally don't think it got up to the start that it needed to. But again, the application is absolutely stellar for when it can apply to an industry or a sector or an organization. Yeah.
If you're in an emergency room and a doctor can sort of pull up the AR and do a 3D image of a heart and and make sure before they perform procedure that they see everything that they need to see. I mean, that's a very powerful application. I mean, I've seen that application, and it's, if I guess I was getting my heart operated on, it'd be nice to know that it'd be nice to know that they had that capability to look at all sides of everything to do it. So, but it will take the right line of business applications. Here we go back to line of business applications to be able to form the beachheads that make it significant.
Yeah. Well, now we're approaching the end. Are there any final thoughts that you want to leave us with?
No, I'm excited about you guys and the Trusted Tech team and what you're doing, and stay focused on customers and creating value and embrace this AI thing, and I believe you are. And we've done a hell of a job so far with the cloud and transitioning your own business to that. And I just think that, there's find ways to differentiate, find ways to create value-added services, and I think there's a lot of opportunities for you to do that. So I'm really excited to see what happens in the future.
Yeah, Kevin joining the Trusted Tech team in 2024.
All right. Well, folks, that's all the time. That's all the time that we have for today. I want to give a huge thank you to Mr. Kevin Turner.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Julian. Make sure to subscribe if you want more content like this. And until then, keep reaching for the cloud.
Awesome.